We look at the suffering and ask, why me? But philosophy stares back and asks, why not you? Arthur Schopenhauer, peering into the bleak machinery of the world, sees a pendulum. He argues that life swings relentlessly between pain and boredom. He suggests that satisfaction is a myth. It's merely the brief, gasping pause between desires, a temporary truce before the next battle. And this echoes the Buddha. He points out the first noble truth, dukkha. He teaches that suffering isn't a glitch in the system, it is the system. Birth is pain, decay is pain. Separation from what we love, that's pain. He implies that as long as we cling to the transient, we are destined to bleed. But then Friedrich Nietzsche steps into the dark. He doesn't offer pity, he offers fire. He argues, to live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. He warns that trying to surgically remove the tragedy from life only leaves us hollow. He claims that the pain isn't the enemy, it's the raw material, the chisel that sculpts the soul. So this isn't about evasion, it's about alchemy. These thinkers don't hand us a map to an easy life. They hand us a lantern, and they tell us to walk. Life, in its most raw form, is contact, collisions. It's the unexpected phone call at 2 a.m., the diagnosis that stops the breath in your throat, the betrayal by a friend you thought was family. The Buddha doesn't shy away from this. He doesn't offer a magic spell to ward off the darkness. In fact, he starts with a rather brutal observation. He looks at the human condition and says quite plainly, you will be struck. There is a teaching buried deep in the Salatha Sutta about a warrior, and this warrior is struck by an arrow. It pierces the skin, it tears the muscle, it burns. The Buddha points out that this is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable chaos of existence, loss, sickness, failure, the sheer physical weight of being alive in a world that is constantly changing. And here's the thing, no one escapes the first arrow, not the king, not the beggar, not the sage. But then the Buddha asks us to look closer. He asks us to look at what happens next. Because when that first arrow hits, something strange happens in the mind. We don't just feel the pain, we react to it. We scream, why me? We think, this isn't fair. We panic, thinking, what if this never stops? What if I'm broken forever? We take a second arrow, one dipped in the poison of our own fear, our own anger, our own resistance, and we plunge it into the exact same wound. This is the second arrow. And the Buddha argues that this second strike, this one is self-inflicted. He distinguishes between pain and suffering. The first arrow is pain. It's biological. It's real. But the second arrow, that is suffering. That is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. Think about the last time you faced a crisis. Maybe you lost your job. That's the first arrow. The financial insecurity, the tightening in the chest, that's real. That's the impact. But then the mind starts spinning. I'm a failure. Everyone will laugh at me. I'll never recover from this. I am worthless. That is the second arrow repeatedly striking the same tender spot. The Buddha warns that this mental proliferation, this spinning of narratives, is actually far more painful than the event itself. The first arrow hurts, yes, but the second arrow is agony. It's a phantom pain that we keep alive, feeding it with our thoughts day after day, year after year. He points out a crucial difference between the instructed mind and the uninstructed mind. The uninstructed person feels the pain and immediately becomes entangled in it. They resist it. They hate it. They push against reality. And in that pushing, they create friction. They create heat. They turn a moment of sadness into a lifetime of depression. They turn a moment of anger into a decade of resentment. It's tragic, really. We are so busy fighting the fact that we were hit, we forget to tend to the wound. But the instructed mind, the one who understands this teaching, they feel the first arrow. They acknowledge it. This hurts. This is fear. This is grief. And then they stop. They do not pick up the second weapon. They do not add the layer of, I shouldn't be feeling this. They simply let the sensation be what it is, a sensation, arising, passing. The Buddha suggests that when you drop the second arrow, the pain changes. It loses its hook. It loses its ability to drag you into the abyss. It becomes pure, just a vibration in the body, heavy perhaps, unpleasant certainly, but bearable. It's a radical form of acceptance, not resignation, not giving up, but a refusal to multiply your own misery. Why do we do it? Why do we stab ourselves over and over? It's a desperate attempt for control. The Buddha observes that we crave a world that is permanent and pleasurable. When reality doesn't match that craving, we throw a tantrum inside our own heads. We argue with the universe. And the universe, being what it is, never argues back. It just is. So the suffering isn't in the event, it's in the resistance to the event. He invites us to see that the second arrow is actually an illusion. It's made of thought. It's made of memory. It's made of projection. It doesn't exist in the physical world. If you could stop the mind's commentary for just 1 second, the second arrow would vanish. Only the first arrow would remain. And the first arrow we can handle. We are built to handle it. We are resilient creatures, biologically designed to heal from wounds. But we are not designed to heal from the wounds we keep inflicting on ourselves every time we replay the tragedy. There is a tremendous freedom in this realization. It means you don't have to like what's happening. You don't have to pretend it's good. You just have to stop adding to the pile. You can be sad without being depressed about being sad. You can be anxious without being angry at yourself for being anxious. The Buddha's voice, echoing through the sutras, is gentle but firm. He asks us to put down the weapon, to stop the war against our own experience. Because life is hard enough. The world will throw enough arrows at you. You don't need to help it. When the tragedy strikes, and it will, feel the impact. Weep if you must. Shake if you have to. That is your humanity. That is the first arrow. But watch the hand that reaches for the second one. Watch the mind that wants to make a story out of it. And in that moment of watching, in that moment of awareness, you have a choice. You can let the arrow fly, or you can let it drop. It feels like the world is burning, doesn't it? Sometimes the walls just start closing in. A job lost, a heart broken, a diagnosis that stops the air in your lungs. And in that moment, the chaos isn't just around you. It's inside. It's a flood. And you feel powerless. But history offers a different perspective, a quieter one. There is a school of thought born not in comfort, but in the fire, Stoicism. And no, it's not about having a stiff upper lip or burying your feelings until you turn into stone. It's deeper than that. It's about survival. Take Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't sitting in an ivory tower. He was the most powerful man in the world, sure, but he was writing his journals in a tent on the edge of a violent frontier, surrounded by plague and betrayal. He argues that we get it all wrong. The pain we feel, he says, it doesn't come from the events themselves. It comes from our judgment of them. He writes, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. He points out that the event is neutral. It just is. The glass breaks, the money is gone. That's physics, that's math. The suffering, that's us. That's the story we tell ourselves about what happened. This is terrible. I'm ruined. It's unfair. Marcus warns that the mind is like a fire. It can take whatever you throw at it, obstacles, failures, insults, and use them as fuel. It consumes the obstacle. It turns the heavy, dark things into light, but only if you stop judging the wood for being wood. Then there's Epictetus, and this is where it gets heavy, because Epictetus wasn't an emperor. He was a slave. He walked with a limp because his leg was broken by a cruel master. If anyone had a right to be angry, to scream at the universe, it was him. But Epictetus argues for something radical, the dichotomy of control. He tells us to look at our lives and draw a line in the sand. On one side, things we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our character. On the other side, everything else, the weather, the economy, what people think of us, even our own bodies. He warns that we suffer because we try to control the storm. We scream at the wind. We weep because the dice didn't roll our way. But he points out that the dice were never ours to hold. He says, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, to realize that you are the captain of your soul, even if the ship is sinking. To Epictetus, freedom isn't about escaping the chains. It's about realizing the chains can't touch your mind unless you let them. And what about the fear? That tight knot in your stomach when you think about tomorrow? Seneca comes in here. He was a man who knew how fickle fortune could be. One day a wealthy advisor, the next facing a death sentence. He looks at our anxiety and he shakes his head. He argues that we are torturing ourselves for no reason. We create monsters in our heads that are 10 times scarier than anything reality can actually produce. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, he says. He points out that we borrow trouble. We grieve for things that haven't happened yet. We flinch before the blow lands. Seneca suggests that this is madness. Why ruin the present moment, the only thing you actually possess, because of a ghost that might never arrive? So how do you deal with the tough times? The Stoics suggest you build a fortress, not of brick, but of perception. They ask you to retreat into what Marcus calls the inner citadel. It's a place inside you that the world cannot touch. People can take your possessions. They can ruin your reputation. They can even hurt your body, but they cannot force you to believe their lies. They cannot force you to lose your temper. They cannot touch your will. That is yours, exclusively yours. It's an ethereal kind of strength, isn't it? To stand in the middle of a hurricane and be the eye, to watch the debris fly past and whisper, "This is not me. This is just the world doing what the world does." So the next time the floor drops out from under you, remember the emperor, the slave, and the exile. They argue that you don't need the world to be easy. You don't need the path to be smooth. You just need to steady your hand. You need to realize that the fortress was never the walls around you. It was the mind inside you. Jalal al-Din Rumi, the 13th century mystic, he shakes his head. He stands there, watching us scramble to barricade our hearts, and he offers a different perspective. A terrifying one, maybe, but a necessary one. He argues that we have it all wrong. He suggests that these pains, they aren't intruders. They aren't punishments sent to destroy you. They are messengers, and messengers always carry news. Rumi points to the human condition, and he sees a guest house. That's his famous metaphor. He says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor." Now, usually when the dark visitors come, the depression, the sorrow, we want to kick them out. We want to sedate them, distract ourselves, run away. But Rumi warns against this. He says, "Welcome and entertain them all." Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, even then. Why? Why would he ask us to treat pain with hospitality? That sounds masochistic, but it's not. Rumi explains that the sorrow is doing work on you, deep structural work. He says he may be clearing you out for some new delight. Think about that. The pain is hollowing you out. It's making space. Without the emptying, there is no room for the filling. Rumi insists that you treat each guest honorably, because if you slam the door on the pain, you also slam the door on the wisdom it brought with it. You miss the message. He has this way of looking at suffering that feels alchemical, like he's turning lead into gold right in front of your eyes. He talks about the cure being inside the pain, not after the pain, inside it. He says, "Don't turn away. Keep your gaze on the bandaged place. That is where the light enters you." It's one of his most famous lines, but stop for a second. Really look at it. He's arguing that your wholeness, your ego, your togetherness is actually a barrier. It's a shell, a hard casing that blocks the light. It's only when life strikes you, when that shell cracks, when you are wounded, that the divine or the truth or the light can actually get in. The wound isn't a structural failure, it's an opening. And Rumi doesn't just stop at the guest house. He takes us into the kitchen. He uses this visceral image of a chickpea boiling in a pot. It's a strange, funny little story, but it cuts deep. He describes a chickpea constantly trying to jump out of the boiling water. It's screaming at the cook, "Why are you doing this to me? I was happy in the field. Why are you burning me?" And the cook, who represents life or God or fate, pushes the chickpea back down with a ladle. The cook says, "No, boil nicely. You aren't being boiled because I hate you. You are being boiled to get flavor, to become sustenance, to become something more than just a raw, hard little bean." Rumi is telling us we are the chickpea. The adversity, the tough times, the heat, that is the boiling. And we try to jump out. We try to escape the heat. But Rumi points out that without the boiling, we remain raw. We remain separate. We never merge into the soup of existence. We never mature. He says, "The result of my life is no more than 3 words. I was raw, I became cooked, I was burnt. That is the path." So when the tough times hit, Rumi advises a kind of radical surrender. Not a passive giving up, but an active leaning in. He says, the cure for pain is in the pain. You have to go into it. He warns that running away from the messenger only prolongs the suffering. It keeps the letter unread. And if you don't read the letter, the messenger keeps knocking, louder and louder. He asks us to stop looking for a way out of the difficulty, and instead look for the way through it. Because according to him, the sorrow is actually the garden. He says, "Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It's a cycle, a brutal, beautiful cycle." So the next time the darkness comes, the next time the depression sits on your chest, or the loss feels too heavy to carry, Rumi would tell you not to fight it. He would tell you to sit down with it, pour it a cup of tea, ask it what it has come to teach you. He says, be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. The pain is not an accident, it is a guide. It is the ladle that cooks you. It is the axe that breaks the shell. It is the messenger, and it has something very important to say. Friedrich Nietzsche doesn't offer you a hug. He doesn't offer a shoulder to cry on or a soft place to land when the world breaks your heart. No, he offers you a hammer. He looks at the wreckage of your bad days, your grief, that crushing weight in your chest, and he doesn't see a tragedy. He sees an opportunity, a forge. He argues that the worst things that happen to you aren't accidents to be avoided. They are the very fuel required for you to become something else, something higher. See, most of us run from pain. It's instinct, right? We want safety, we want comfort. But Nietzsche warns us against this comfort. He looks at the person who has never suffered, who has never had to fight for their sanity, and he sees them as small, fragile. He calls this the last man, the blinking, comfortable human who just wants to be warm and full. And he asks you, is that really what you want? To be safe? Or do you want to be great? He points out a brutal truth about the human condition. He says, you must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? Think about that. The burning, the ashes. He's telling us that the version of you that exists right now, the one that is hurting, the one that is scared, that version has to die. It has to be consumed by the fire of this adversity, so that the stronger version can step out of the smoke. You are both the sculptor and the marble, and that is a painful realization, because to be the sculptor, you have to hold the chisel, but to be the marble, you have to be struck again and again and again. It hurts to be shaped. But Nietzsche insists this pain is not meaningless. That's the great fear, isn't it? That our suffering is for nothing? But he flips the script. He argues that suffering is actually the ultimate interpreter. It creates depth. He writes, "The discipline of suffering, of great suffering. Do you not know that it is this discipline alone that has produced all the elevations of humanity so far?" So when you are in the dark, when you've lost your job or your love or your way, Nietzsche doesn't want you to just get through it. He doesn't want you to just survive. Survival is for animals. You are capable of more. He introduces this concept that is perhaps the hardest pill to swallow in all of philosophy, Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not tolerance of fate, not acceptance, love. He challenges you to look at your life, every loss, every embarrassment, every moment of excruciating pain, and say, yes, this too. I want this too. Why? Because it belongs to you. Because it is the thread that weaves the tapestry of who you are. If you pull out the dark threads, you unravel the whole thing. You wouldn't be you without the struggle. He says, my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. It's a terrifying standard. It sounds almost insane. To love the crash, to love the heartbreak. But Nietzsche argues that this is the only way to truly conquer adversity. If you accept it fully, if you embrace it, you take away its power to hurt you. You turn the poison into medicine. He talks about the abyss. We've all stood there, looking down into the darkness of our own lives. And he warns that if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. It's easy to get lost in the despair. It's easy to let the darkness consume you. But the goal isn't to avoid the abyss. It's to learn to dance on the edge of it. He believes that out of this chaos, out of this confusion and turmoil comes creativity, comes brilliance. He famously says, "I tell you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." So you're in chaos right now. Good. You feel like everything is falling apart? Good. Nietzsche would say you are pregnant with a dancing star. You are on the brink of creating something magnificent, but only if you don't run away. Only if you stand your ground and let the fire burn away everything that isn't essential. Adversity, to Nietzsche, is the great separator. It separates the weak from the strong, the wheat from the chaff. It strips you of your vanity and your illusions and leaves you naked before reality. And in that nakedness, you find your true strength. He reminds us that the tree that wants to grow tall, that wants to reach the height of light, must send its roots down deep, into the dirt, into the dark, into the rock. You cannot have the height without the depth. You cannot have the light without the shadow. So don't wish for an easier life. Nietzsche would probably laugh at that wish. He would tell you to wish for the strength to bear the heavy load, to wish for shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of existence. Because in the end, he argues, what doesn't kill you? Well, you know the rest. But it's not just about getting stronger. It's about becoming more alive. It's about looking at the worst life can throw at you and smiling back, knowing that it is just another hammer blow shaping you into a masterpiece. It starts with the water. Always the water with the Taoists. Fluid, unyielding yet soft, the great metaphor for existence. Chuang Tzu, the old sage who loved to laugh at the absurdity of rules, brings us to the bank of a wide, misty river. He doesn't give us a list of commandments. He doesn't tell us to stiffen our upper lip. No, he tells a story, a simple one. He points to a man crossing this river in his own small skiff. He's paddling along. Maybe he's lost in thought. Maybe he's worrying about dinner. And then, thud. Another boat crashes into him. Violent. Sudden.
Now, Chuang Tzu asks us to watch the man's reaction. It's visceral, isn't it? The man in the skiff spins around. He's ready to scream. His blood boils. He's going to curse the other pilot to the high heavens. Watch where you're going, you blind fool, you idiot. The anger is instant. It's hot. It feels justified. But then he looks. He stares into the other boat, and he sees nothing. No pilot, no enemy, no fool. It is an empty boat, just driftwood, unmoored, carried by the current. And Chuang Tzu notes something fascinating happens in that split second. The anger, it vanishes, just evaporates. The man doesn't scream at the wood. He doesn't curse the wind. There is no one to blame, so the fire goes out. It's the same collision, the same jolt, the same potential damage to his own vessel, but the suffering, the emotional agony of the event, is gone. Why? Chuang Tzu argues that it isn't the event that causes us pain. It isn't the collision. It's the intent we project onto it. It's the belief that there is a who doing this to us. When we see a person steering that other boat, we feel targeted. We feel disrespected. Our ego flares up because it bumped into another ego. But when the boat is empty, we accept it as just the flow, nature, mechanics. And here is where the philosopher cuts deep. He warns us that we go through life treating everything like a piloted boat. Think about it. You get stuck in traffic, you scream at the cars, you feel they are blocking you. You lose your job, you blame the manager, you feel he rejected you. A relationship ends, you blame the partner, you feel they hurt you. We are constantly colliding, and we are constantly screaming, "Watch where you're going." But Chuang Tzu suggests a radical shift, a terrifyingly quiet perspective. He asks, what if they are all empty boats? That rude driver, he's not targeting you. He's driven by his own anxiety, his lateness, his chaotic morning. He is an empty vessel caught in the current of his own stress. That boss, she isn't plotting your demise. She's swept up in corporate currents, budget cuts, fear for her own standing, the illness, the accident, the tragedy, empty boats, drifting in the great river of the Tao. When we see the intent, we suffer. When we see the mechanics, the cause and effect, the impersonal nature of the universe, we find peace. A man is not angry at the tile that falls from the roof and hits him, surely, because the tile has no malice. So why be angry at the world? But Chuang Tzu doesn't stop there. He never does. He takes it a step further. He flips the mirror. He says, if you can empty your own boat crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you. No one will seek to harm you. This is the harder truth. See, we aren't just the victims of collisions. We are the collisions. He points out that we walk around with our boats full of ego, full of opinions, full of I am this and I deserve that. We are heavy. We displace a lot of water. And because we are so full of ourselves, we are easy to hit. We present a large target. When someone insults you, why does it hurt? Because there is someone in your boat to receive the insult. There is an ego there saying, how dare you speak to me? But if you empty your boat, if you let go of that heavy self-importance, the insult passes right through, like wind through an open window. If you are empty, you have no edges to catch on. You flow. Chuang Tzu whispers that this is the ultimate way to deal with tough times. Not to fight the current, not to scream at the driftwood, but to become weightless. If you are empty, loss cannot take anything from you because you are clutching nothing. If you are empty, failure cannot crush you because you aren't building a monument to yourself. It's a beautiful, haunting image. The world is a river of drifting vessels. Some are piloted by confused, angry people. Some are loose and wild. Collisions are inevitable. You will get hit. But the pain, the suffering, that comes from two things: thinking the other boat is out to get you, and being so full of yourself that the crash shatters your identity. So, next time the world hits you, next time the check bounces, or the lover leaves, or the rain simply won't stop, don't scream at the storm. Look closely. The boat is empty. And if you can manage it, try to make sure yours is too. It starts with a simple, terrifying realization. The world is heavy. It spins without our permission. Tragedies strike, lovers leave, and bodies fail. And in the middle of this chaos, we stand there, trying to hold back the tide with our bare hands. This is where Epictetus enters the room. He isn't a king. He isn't a wealthy merchant. He's a slave. A man who walked with a limp because his leg was deliberately broken by a cruel master. If anyone had a reason to scream at the unfairness of the universe, it was him. But he doesn't scream. He whispers. He points to a single dividing line that cuts through the noise of human suffering. He calls it the dichotomy of control. Epictetus argues that our agony doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from a fundamental error in judgment, a misclassification. He opens his Epicurean, his handbook for living, with a statement so blunt it feels like a slap. Some things are in our control and others not. That's it. But listen to how he breaks it down. He says that things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and in one word, whatever are not our own actions. He warns us that we are confused. We think our reputation is ours. It's not. It lives in the minds of others, and they can destroy it on a whim. We think our bodies are ours, but he reminds us they are subject to disease, to age, to accidents. They are clay. They are borrowed. And the moment we attach our happiness to these things, to the things that are not up to us, we become slaves. Not in the way he was a slave to a master, but slaves to fear, slaves to chance. He says, if you think that which is yours, and that which is not your own, as it is in reality, not your own, no one will ever compel you. No one will hinder you. But if you mistake what is not yours for your own, you will lament, you will be disturbed, you will blame both gods and men. It's a hard pill to swallow. So let's look at the man at the other end of the spectrum, Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on earth. He could snap his fingers and end nations. If anyone had control, it was him. Yet night after night, in a cold tent on the barbarian frontier, he wrote to himself. He didn't write about his power. He wrote about his powerlessness. He strips away the illusion. Marcus observes that everything outside his mind is just external. It's static. It has no power to hurt him unless he gives it permission. He writes, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. See, he treats the mind like a fortress, an inner citadel. The world can throw fire at the walls, it can batter the gates, people can lie about him, betray him, or try to kill him. But he argues that these things cannot touch the soul unless the soul opens the door and lets them in. He views the art of living not like dancing, but like wrestling. Why wrestling? Because a dancer waits for the music to start. A wrestler stands ready for the sudden blow. The wrestler knows he cannot control the opponent's move. He can only control his stance, his balance, his reaction. And this is where the empathy of the Stoics shines through, even if it feels cold at first. They aren't asking us to be statues. They know we feel pain. Seneca, the statesman who faced exile and eventually a forced suicide, knew this intimately. He doesn't say, don't feel. He says, don't add to it. He points out that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We worry about the diagnosis before it comes. We mourn the loss before it happens. We stress over the opinion of a stranger we will never meet again. Seneca warns that this is madness. It is paying interest on a debt you may never owe. So how do we deal with the tough times? Epictetus would tell us to look at the adversity in front of us, the job loss, the heartbreak, the failure, and ask one question. Is this up to me? If the answer is no, he suggests a radical, almost impossible response. Be ready to say that it is nothing to you. Not that it doesn't matter, but that it is not you. It is the weather. You don't scream at the rain. You put on a coat.
Marcus Aurelius takes it a step further. He doesn't just want us to tolerate the things we can't control. He wants us to use them. He uses the metaphor of a fire. A small candle is extinguished by the wind, but a blazing fire, it consumes everything you throw into it. It turns the obstacle into fuel. The impediment to action advances action, he writes. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the poetic beauty of their logic. The adversity isn't a blockade, it's the raw material. The tough time is the weight in the gym. You can't control the weight of the iron, but you control the lift. You control the effort. So, when the world falls apart, the Stoic doesn't try to glue the pieces back together. He looks at his own hands. He looks at his own mind. He secures the only thing he has ever truly possessed, his reasoned choice. He realizes that he is an actor in a play written by someone else. He cannot choose the role, beggar, king, cripple, hero. Epictetus says that is not his business. His business is to play the assigned role well, to play it with dignity, to play it without complaint. Because in the end, peace isn't the absence of the storm. It's the calm at the center of it. It's the quiet confidence that even if the ship sinks, the captain remains steady. There is a way of looking at pain that feels dangerous, reckless almost. Because when life hits you hard, when the floor drops out, your instinct, my instinct, everyone's instinct is to bolt the door, to hide, to scream, no, not this, anything but this. We build walls, we fortify, we try to keep the darkness out. But Jalal al-Din Rumi, he shakes his head. He smiles that knowing, ancient smile and tells us we've got it all wrong. He introduces this radical, terrifying, beautiful idea, the guest house. This being human is a guest house, he writes. Every morning, a new arrival. Think about that. He doesn't say this being human is a fortress. He doesn't say it's a sanctuary where only the good things are allowed. It's a guest house, a place of transit, a place where things come, stay for a bit, and leave. And he says we don't get to choose the reservation list. A joy, a depression, a meanness, he lists them. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Rumi is pointing at the unpredictability of it all. You wake up and suddenly the air feels heavy. That's depression knocking. Or maybe it's a sharp, stinging comment from a friend. That's meanness standing on the porch. Most of us, we'd pretend we're not home. We'd turn off the lights and hide behind the sofa. But Rumi challenges us. He says, welcome and entertain them all of them. Even the ones that hurt, even the ones that make your chest tight. He takes it further, and this is where it gets heavy. He talks about the really bad days, the catastrophic days. He speaks of a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. We've all been there, that moment when loss or failure just guts you. It takes everything you thought was yours. Your confidence, your security, your plans for the future, the furniture of your life, gone, swept out. And what is Rumi's advice in the face of this violence? What does he tell us to do when the house is empty and echoing? Treat each guest honorably. It sounds insane. Treat the sorrow honorably? Treat the anxiety like a VIP? Why? Why would anyone do that? Because, Rumi argues, that sorrow isn't just a vandal,
It's a contractor. It's a renovator. He says he may be clearing you out for some new delight. See, Rumi looks at the emptiness not as a loss, but a space. You can't bring new, beautiful furniture into a room that's already cluttered with old, broken junk. Sometimes the ego, the pride, the rigid ways we think life has to be, they take up too much room. So sorrow comes in. It sweeps the floor. It clears the space. It hurts, yes. God, it hurts. But it prepares the ground for what's coming next. He's telling us that the pain has a purpose. It's not random cruelty. It's preparation. And then he gets to the specific dark corners of the mind, the dark thought, the shame, the malice, the things we are most afraid of finding in ourselves. The ugly parts. Usually we shove these down, we repress them, we pretend they don't exist. Rumi says no. Meet them at the door laughing, he urges, and invite them in. Laughing. Can you feel the freedom in that? To stop fighting your own shadows, to look at your shame, your fear, your anger, and just say, oh, it's you. Come in, sit down, have some tea. By welcoming them, Rumi suggests, you take away their power to hurt you. If you fight the darkness, it fights back. It gets stronger. But if you invite it in, if you sit with it, it just becomes a guest. And guests, remember? They leave. They always leave. So the next time the world feels like it's collapsing, or the heaviness in your chest feels unbearable, remember the guest house. Don't brace yourself against the door. Don't hate the visitors. Rumi finishes with this gentle reminder. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. They are messengers, every single one. The joy tells you what you love. The sorrow tells you what you value. The anger tells you what needs to change. The emptiness tells you you are ready for something new. They aren't intruders. They are guides. And if you listen to them, really listen, without fear, they will show you exactly where you need to go. Friedrich Nietzsche didn't write for the comfortable. He didn't write for the people who want life to be a soft, cushioned ride. He wrote for the breaking point. See, this is a man who knew pain, intimately. He was plagued by blinding migraines, stomach ailments, loneliness. He spent half his life in the shadow of sickness. So when Nietzsche talks about suffering, he isn't theorizing. He's bleeding on the page. And he brings us perhaps the most terrifying, heavy psychological test ever devised. A test designed to break you, or wake you up. He calls it the eternal recurrence. He asks a question that stops you cold. What if a demon crept after you one night, right into your loneliest loneliness, and whispered to you, this life, as you now live it, and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Think about what he's actually saying. No new things, no fresh starts. No heaven, no escape. Every pain, every grief, every tiny shameful thought, and every single unspeakably small thing in your life, all of it, returning in the exact same succession and sequence. The spider in the corner, the moonlight between the trees, the moment your heart broke, the moment you failed. Again, and again, and again, forever, like an hourglass turning over, an eternal grinding loop. Nietzsche warns that this thought is the heaviest weight. It's suffocating, isn't it? Most of us, we live for the future. We say, I'll be happy when this is over.
or once I get through this tough time, things will be better. We treat the present moment, especially the painful ones, as something to just get through, like a waiting room for a better life.
But Nietzsche slams the door on that. He traps you in the now. He suggests that if you heard this news, that your suffering repeats forever, you might throw yourself down and gnash your teeth. You might curse the demon who spoke thus. Because if your life is hard right now, the idea of repeating it is hell. It is the ultimate nightmare. But, and this is where the magic happens, this is where he flips the script. Nietzsche doesn't offer this thought experiment to crush you. He offers it to liberate you. He asks, how would you have to change? How would you have to look at your life right now to not curse that demon? To answer him instead, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine. To get there, Nietzsche argues you need a different tool, a specific kind of armor for the soul. He calls it Amor Fati, love of fate. Not acceptance, not tolerance, love. There is a massive difference. Acceptance is passive. It's resignation. It's saying, okay, I guess I have to deal with this. It's weak. It's merely bearing the burden. Nietzsche despises that weakness. He wants fire. He writes, my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. Love the crash, love the loss, love the betrayal. Why? Because he argues life is a package deal. You cannot pick and choose. The chaotic, messy, painful parts are inextricably linked to the beautiful parts. The grandeur of your character, it is carved out by the very trauma you want to delete. If you say no to the pain, you say no to the growth that came from it. If you reject the past, you reject the person standing here today. Nietzsche points out that everything is entangled. Every knot, every tear, every scream is a thread in the tapestry of who you are. To wish for an easier life is to wish for a lesser life, a life without the friction that creates heat, that creates light. He wants you to embrace the chaos, to look at the worst things that have happened to you, the things that keep you up at night, and say, yes, this too, this belongs. It's almost a form of radical gratitude. When you practice Amor Fati, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. You become the master of your reaction. You stop hoping for a different past. You stop waiting for a different future. You lean into the storm. Nietzsche believes that the Superman, the Übermensch, is the one who can look at the eternal recurrence, look at the endless loop of joy and suffering, and shout, Da capo, from the beginning, I'll do it all again. It is a terrifying standard. It sounds almost impossible, but think about the power shift. If you can love your fate, you are untouchable. You are invincible, because nothing can happen to you that you do not welcome. The world can take everything from you, but it cannot take your yes. He reminds us, what does not kill me makes me stronger. We quote that all the time. We put it on t-shirts, but we forget the context. He isn't talking about muscles. He's talking about the spirit. He's talking about the capacity to digest suffering and turn it into fuel. So when the darkness comes, and it will, Nietzsche doesn't want you to look for the exit. He wants you to look at the demon. He wants you to realize that this moment is your life. It is not a rehearsal. It is not a mistake. It is necessary. And if you had to live it 1,000 times over, he challenges you to live it so fully, so bravely,
and with such fierce acceptance that you would welcome it back with open arms. We spend so much of our lives screaming at the sky, fighting, pushing, grinding against the gears of reality. It's exhausting, isn't it? When the storm hits, when the job is lost, when the heart is broken, when the walls start closing in, our first instinct is to stiffen up, to brace for impact. We clench our fists. We try to force the world to be what we want it to be. We try to swim upstream, thrashing against a current that is infinitely stronger than we are, and we drown. But there is a quiet voice from ancient China that suggests we've got it all wrong. An old master wandering the hills, perhaps watching a leaf float down a river. Lao Tzu. In the Tao Te Ching, he doesn't tell us to fight harder. He doesn't tell us to conquer our adversity. He points to something else entirely, something softer, something that feels dangerous because it requires us to let go. He calls it Wu Wei.
Now, the translation is tricky. It usually comes out as non-action or effortless action, and immediately the Western mind recoils. We think, do nothing? Just sit there while my life falls apart? That's lazy, that's giving up. But Lao Tzu shakes his head. He argues that Wu Wei isn't about laziness, it's not about apathy, it's about alignment. He asks us to look at nature. Nature does not hurry, he observes, yet everything is accomplished. Think about that. The seasons don't struggle to change. The sun doesn't strain to rise. The grass doesn't have to try to grow. It just does. There is a flow to the universe, a rhythm, a Tao. And Lao Tzu warns that our suffering, the real, deep agony of tough times, doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from our resistance to it. It comes because we are trying to impose our will on a universe that doesn't care about our plans. He offers us the ultimate metaphor, water. The supreme good is like water, he says. Water benefits all things and does not compete with them. See, water is the softest thing in the world. You can put your hand right through it. It yields. It has no shape of its own. It takes the shape of the cup, the riverbed, the crack in the pavement. But Lao Tzu points out the paradox here. Because it yields, because it is soft, it is virtually indestructible. You can't break water. You can't hurt it. And yet, water cuts through rock. Over time, the soft overcomes the hard. The flexible overcomes the rigid. So when adversity comes, Lao Tzu suggests we become like water. When we face a blockage, a failure, a tragedy, he advises against crashing into it head first. Don't be the rock. The rock is rigid. The rock is hard. And because it is hard, it can be shattered. Be the water. Flow around the obstacle. Find the path of least resistance. If the door is locked, don't kick it down. Check the window. Or maybe just wait. Maybe the door isn't meant to open yet. He warns us that rigidity is actually a sign of death. Men are born soft and supple, he writes. Dead, they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. So whoever is hard and stiff is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. This hits hard when you're in the thick of it, because when we are hurt, we want to build walls. We want to become hard to protect ourselves. We think that if we become cold and unshakable, the pain won't touch us. But Lao Tzu argues that this brittleness makes us vulnerable. It means that when the next wind comes, we won't bend, we'll snap. To practice Wu Wei in the face of disaster is to stop forcing a solution. It's the art of letting things happen. It's realizing that you cannot control the external world. You can't control the economy.
You can't control other people. You can't control the timing of your success. Lao Tzu suggests that by trying to control these things, we ruin them. The master sees things as they are, without trying to control them, he says. She lets them go their own way and resides at the center of the circle.
So you lost the path you thought you were on. The relationship ended, the career stalled. The Wu Wei approach is to stop flailing. Stop trying to swim back to the shore that is already gone. Turn onto your back. Float. Let the current take you. Trust that the current is going somewhere. It's terrifying. It requires a profound trust in the universe. It requires us to believe that we don't have to force our survival, that if we step back, the mud will settle and the water will become clear. Do you have the patience to wait, Lao Tzu asks, till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? That's the key. The right action arises by itself. When we stop panicking, when we stop forcing, clarity returns. We see the opening we missed because we were too busy banging our heads against the wall. We find a new direction that is actually more aligned with who we are. He's telling us that the tough times are often just the universe correcting our course. We were swimming upstream, and it was hard, and it hurt. The adversity? That's just the current overpowering us, forcing us to turn around and go with the flow. It's not defeat, it's a redirect. So in the midst of the chaos, Lao Tzu invites us to breathe, to loosen the jaw, to unclench the hands, to stop trying to be the hammer, be the water, soft, yielding, moving low, moving slow. And in that softness, you will find a strength that the hard times cannot break. You will endure, not because you fought, but because you flowed. There is a heaviness we all carry. Sometimes it's a sharp, piercing grief. Other times it's just a dull background hum of anxiety, a sense that things aren't quite right, that they could be better, that we should be better. And we spend so much of our lives trying to outrun this feeling. We chase the next promotion, the next relationship, the next high, thinking that if we just arrange the furniture of our lives perfectly, the unease will vanish. But it doesn't. 25 centuries ago, a man sat under a Bodhi tree in India and decided he wasn't getting up until he figured out why. Why do we hurt? Why is satisfaction so slippery? Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, didn't come back with a promise that everything would be okay. He didn't offer a magic spell to banish pain. Instead, he offered a diagnosis, a cold, hard look at the machinery of human experience. He starts with the first noble truth, dukkha. Now, often this is translated as life is suffering, and that sounds bleak, almost pessimistic. But scholars and monks point out that suffering is too clumsy a word. Dukkha refers to a wheel that's off-center, a cart with a broken axle. It's the bumpy ride. It's the inherent unsatisfactoriness of existence. The Buddha argues that we suffer not just because bad things happen, but because we fundamentally misunderstand the nature of reality. We demand permanence from a world that is defined by flux. Think about a sunset. It's beautiful, breathtaking, but part of that beauty is that it's fleeting. The colors fade into gray, the night takes over. But we want the sunset to stay. We try to freeze the moment, and when we can't, we mourn. The Buddha identifies this as tanya, thirst, craving, a desperate clinging to things being a certain way. He points out that we are constantly at war with the present moment. We are either pushing away what we hate or clinging tightly to what we love. And it's this tension, this refusal to let reality be what it is, that creates the deep, soul-crushing despair we call suffering.
There is a powerful parable in the Buddhist texts, specifically the Salata Sutta, that explains this perfectly. It's the story of the second arrow. The Buddha asks his students, if a person is struck by an arrow,
Is it painful? Obviously, they say. Yes, it hurts. Then he asks, if that person is struck by a second arrow, exactly in the same wound, would that hurt even more? Well, of course. He explains that life shoots the first arrow. This is unavoidable pain. You lose your job, you get sick, someone you love walks out the door, the car breaks down in the rain. That is the first arrow. It is physical, it is real, and it is part of the deal of being alive. Even the awakened ones, the enlightened ones, get hit by the first arrow. They feel cold, they feel hunger, they feel grief. But then, he warns, we shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This is the mental commentary, the reaction to the reaction. We get hit by the first arrow, say a rejection, and then we immediately launch the second one. Why is this happening to me? I'm such a failure. I'll never be happy again. This isn't fair. The Buddha argues that the first arrow is simply pain, that the second arrow, that is suffering. And the tragedy, he points out, is that the second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. We are the archers. We compound our pain by resisting it, by judging it, by creating a narrative of victimhood around it. It's a radical shift in perspective. He isn't saying don't feel sad. He isn't saying don't grieve. He is saying don't add a layer of torment on top of the grief. There is a quote attributed to the Dhammapada where he says, "You can only lose what you cling to." This is the crux of his philosophy on hard times. The harder we grip, the more it hurts when life inevitably rips it away. He teaches the concept of anicca, impermanence. He wants us to see that the tough time you are in right now, it has the same nature as the clouds passing overhead. It arises, it stays for a while, and it passes away. But because we are in the storm, we think the storm is forever. We build a house in the storm. We identify with the storm. I am depressed. I am broken. The Buddha suggests a softer approach. He invites us to become the observer of the storm, rather than the victim of it. To watch the pain arises, acknowledge it. This is sadness, and let it be, without pushing it away and without drowning in it. It sounds simple, but in practice, it is the hardest thing you will ever do. When the world is crumbling, our instinct is to tighten up, to fight, to scream. But the Buddhist approach is counterintuitive. It asks us to relax into the discomfort, to stop swimming upstream against the current of change. Pema Chodron, a modern teacher of this lineage, puts it beautifully when she interprets these teachings. She says we must lean into the sharp points. Instead of numbing ourselves or running away, we turn toward the pain with curiosity. We stop running. Because the Buddha argues that the way out is not around the fire, it is through it. But we walk through it knowing that the fire is not us. It is just a sensation. Just a passing weather pattern in the vast sky of consciousness. So, when the adversity hits, when the floor drops out, the Buddhist advice is to check for the second arrow. Feel the pain of the first one. Cry. Scream if you have to. That is human. But put the bow down. Don't shoot the second one. Don't tell yourself a story about how your life is over. Don't tell yourself you are being punished. Just be with the raw sensation of the moment. And remember that this too is a wave. And waves do not stay frozen in the air forever. They crash, they recede, and the ocean remains. There is a moment in everyone's life when the lights go out. Not literally, but internally. The script falls apart. The narrative you built for yourself, that you're a good person, that hard work pays off, that there is a cosmic order. It just dissolves. It's haunting, isn't it? But Nietzsche isn't trying to scare you. He's diagnosing you. He argues that when tragedy strikes, when we face loss, failure, or that crushing sense of emptiness, our instinct is to look away. We numb ourselves. We hide behind religion or alcohol or mindless entertainment. We beg the universe for an explanation. Why me? Nietzsche looks at that question and laughs. Grimly, maybe, but he laughs because he believes the universe owes us nothing. He points out that we are living in the shadow of the death of God. And he doesn't just mean the literal decline of religion. He means the collapse of absolute meaning. The safety net is gone. There is no pre-written script giving your suffering a purpose. That's terrifying. But, and this is where he turns the darkness into fire, he says this terror is actually absolute freedom. See, Nietzsche presents us with a challenge, a psychological test so brutal it could break a weaker spirit. He calls it the eternal recurrence. He asks you to imagine a demon. This demon creeps into your loneliest loneliness and says, "This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every thought and sigh, the unutterably small and the tragically great, all of it, returning in the exact same succession and sequence, like an hourglass turn over, again and again, forever." Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth? Would you curse the demon? Or would you answer, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? Nietzsche pushes this question into your chest. He demands an answer. Most of us would crumble. We'd say, "I can handle the good parts again, but the heartbreak, the failure, the nights I cried until my throat burned? No, not that." But Nietzsche says, no, you don't get to pick and choose. It's a package deal. He argues that you cannot have the height of the mountain without the depth of the valley. They are one piece of geometry. If you want the joy, you must accept the agony that carved the space for it. This brings us to his most beautiful, difficult concept, Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not acceptance of fate. Acceptance is passive. It's weak. It's saying, I guess I have to tolerate this. Nietzsche wants you to love it. He writes, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, but love it." Think about the power of that, to look at your worst day, your deepest scar, and say, yes, this too, this belongs to me. He believes that suffering isn't an objection to life, it's the fuel for it. He compares the human spirit to a block of stone, and life is the sculptor with a hammer and chisel. The blows hurt, they chip away pieces of you, they leave cracks. But Nietzsche reminds us, how else does the statue emerge? Without the hammer, you are just a rock. With the hammer, you become art. He speaks of the Übermensch, the overman, the one who has overcome himself. This individual doesn't pray for an easier life. They pray for a stronger back. They take the chaos inside them and use it. As he beautifully puts it, I tell you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. So when the abyss stares at you, when the darkness feels total, Nietzsche challenges you not to blink. He suggests that your pain is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are alive. It is raw material. He wants you to grab that suffering by the throat and use it to forge your own values, to say yes to life. Not because it's easy, just about becoming stronger. It's about becoming more
more deep, more profound, more human. The abyss is there. It always will be. But Nietzsche tells us, you don't have to fear it. You just have to learn how to dance on the edge.
It starts with the silence. You know the one. That cold, deafening silence when you scream at the universe, "Why is this happening?" And the universe doesn't answer. It just stares back, indifferent, empty. It's terrifying. And this is where the existentialists step in. Not with a hug, but with a mirror. They don't offer false hope. They don't say everything happens for a reason. In fact, Jean-Paul Sartre argues the exact opposite. He looks at that void, that lack of inherent design, and he tells us we are terrifyingly, beautifully alone. He calls it existence preceding essence. It sounds academic, but it's actually visceral. It means there is no script, no grand destiny written in the stars before you were born. You exist first. You show up. You appear on the stage. And then, only then, do you define who you are. Sartre warns that this freedom is a heavy burden. He says we are condemned to be free. Condemned. Because if there's no script, there's no excuse. If life falls apart, if the walls are closing in, we can't blame sake. We can't blame the gods. We are responsible for how we respond. And that weight, it crushes people. It's easier to play the victim. It's easier to say, the world is against me. But Sartre won't let us off the hook. He insists that even in the darkest prison, even when you cannot control what happens to you, you still have one absolute freedom left. The freedom to choose your attitude, to choose your own way. But what if the suffering feels pointless? What if it's just absurd? Enter Albert Camus. Camus sees the human need for meaning colliding with the silent, meaningless universe, and he calls this collision the absurd. It's like falling in love with a rock. You want connection, the rock offers nothing. So, what do we do when life knocks us down for no reason? Do we give up? Camus says no. He points to the myth of Sisyphus, the man condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down, every single time. It is the definition of futile suffering. It's the job you hate, the chronic illness, the grief that won't fade, pushing the rock, watching it fall. But Camus points out something brilliant. He focuses on the moment Sisyphus walks back down the hill, that pause. The rock is at the bottom. He has to go get it. He knows the struggle is endless. He knows it's absurd, and yet he goes anyway. Camus argues that the rebellion lies in the doing. By accepting the rock, by pushing it in spite of the futility, Sisyphus becomes the master of his days. He isn't defeated by the punishment, he transcends it. Camus famously concludes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Happy. Not because the rock is light, but because the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. But there's a step further, a step into the deepest darkness humanity has ever known. Viktor Frankl. He wasn't writing from a comfortable armchair in a Parisian cafe like Sartre or Camus. He was writing from the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Dachau. He was living inside the worst hell imaginable. Frankl noticed something haunting in the camps. He saw that the men who survived, not just physically but spiritually, weren't necessarily the strongest or the toughest. They were the ones who had a why. He quotes Nietzsche saying, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Frankl argues that suffering in and of itself is meaningless. Suffering is just pain, but we have the power to squeeze meaning out of it, to transmute it. He tells the story of walking to a work site in the bitter cold, beaten, starving, thinking of his wife. And in that moment, he realized that love, the image of his wife, the conversation he was having with her in his mind, was a reality that the guards couldn't touch, that the cold couldn't freeze. He calls this the will to meaning. It's not about finding happiness. Happiness is a side effect. It's about finding a purpose that is bigger than the pain. Frankl suggests that despair is a simple equation. Despair equals suffering without meaning. If you have suffering and you have no meaning, you have despair. But if you inject meaning, the suffering becomes a task, a challenge. He warns us not to ask, "What do I expect from life?" That's the wrong question. He says we must understand that life is expecting something from us. Every hour, every challenge, every tragedy is a question life is asking you. How will you handle this? Who will you be in this fire?
So, when the adversity hits, the existentialists don't offer a cushion, they offer a call to arms. Sartre tells you to own your freedom. Camus tells you to rebel against the absurdity by keeping on. And Frankl holds your gaze and tells you that your suffering is not the end of your story. It is the raw material for your masterpiece. He insists that even when everything is taken, your possessions, your status, your health, the last of the human freedoms remains, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And in that choice, we find the anchor. Marcus Aurelius knew this trick well. He wasn't just a philosopher writing in a quiet garden. He was an emperor, a man surrounded by war, plague, betrayal within his own family, and the constant crushing weight of Rome on his shoulders. He had every reason to panic, to drown in the immediate chaos. But he didn't. Instead, he practiced a mental movement, a shift. He called it the view from above. He argues that our suffering comes from a lack of perspective. We are zoomed in too tight. Like a camera lens pressed against a brick wall, all we see is the rough texture, the dirt, the insurmountable obstacle. We lose context. So Marcus tells us to pull back, way back. He writes in his meditations, almost as a command to his own soul. Think of the substance of all being, and how small a share of it is yours. Think of all time, and how brief and momentary is the part of it allotted to you. He wants us to leave our bodies, mentally at least, to float up. First, you rise above the room. You see yourself sitting there, holding your head in your hands. Then you rise above the city. The traffic, the shouting, the deals being made, the hearts breaking in apartment buildings. Marcus points out that from this height, the armies fighting on the borders of the empire, they look like ants fighting over a crumb. He says, consider the lives led once by others long ago, the lives to be led by others after you, the lives led even now in foreign lands. It's humbling, maybe a little terrifying, because when you look at the earth from the cosmos, as Marcus urges us to do, boundaries vanish. The big problem that kept you awake at night, it disappears. Not because it's not real, but because in the scale of the cosmos, it is microscopic. He isn't trying to make us feel insignificant to crush us. That's a common misunderstanding. People think, oh, Stoicism says I don't matter, so why bother? No, that's nihilism. Marcus is aiming for something else, liberation. He suggests that when we realize how small we are, the weight falls off. The ego, that loud, screaming voice that says, why is this happening to me? It gets quiet because the me isn't the center of the universe anymore. And it's not just about space, it's about time. Marcus was obsessed with the river of time. He constantly reminds himself that the present moment is a pinprick between two eternities, the infinite past, the infinite future. The infinity of past and future gapes before us, he writes, a chasm whose depths we cannot see. So, that embarrassment you felt yesterday? Gone in a blink.
That failure you think defines you, it will be forgotten. Even the people who remember it will be dead soon, and the people who remember them will be dead soon after. He asks, what is it that you value? To be praised? No. To be remembered? But the man who remembers and the man who is remembered, they both pass away in a day. It sounds dark, I know, but sit with it for a second. If nothing lasts, then neither does this pain, neither does this hardship. He teaches that this perspective brings a profound calm, a silence. When you look at the stars, or the ocean, or the vast history of humanity, you realize you are part of a rhythm much larger than your stumbling. You are part of the logos, the great unfolding order of nature. You aren't a victim of the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself for a brief, flickering moment. Seneca, another heavyweight of the Stoa, echoes this. He warns against the storm in a teacup. He looks at our anxieties, our fear of poverty, our fear of death, our desperate need for status, and he laughs, gently. He compares us to children crying because someone took our toy. To the child, the tragedy is absolute, but the adult sees the broader context. The view from above makes you the adult in the room of your own life. It forces a question. Is this thing that is upsetting me right now going to matter in a year, in 10 years, in a century? If the answer is no, Marcus says, then let it go. Don't give it your soul. Don't rent out your peace of mind to things that are destined to turn to dust. He writes, you can discard most of the junk that clutters your mind and clear out space for yourself by comprehending the scale of the world. Space. That's what this gives you. Breathing room. And there is a beautiful paradox here. When you zoom out, you don't just see your smallness, you see your connection. This is what the Stoics called sympathia, the mutual interdependence of all things. From the view from above, you see that you are woven into the fabric of everything. Your struggle isn't isolated. It's the human struggle. The person who hurt you, they are struggling too, driven by the same winds of fate and character. Marcus reminds us that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. So when the adversity hits, when the floor drops out, don't look down at the wreckage. Look up. See the vastness. Feel the cold, clean air of the cosmos. Remember the millions who came before you, who suffered just like this and survived and passed on. The view from down here is chaotic. It's tragedy. But the view from above, it's just nature. It's just the path. And you have the strength to walk it.
Friedrich Nietzsche. Just the name feels heavy, doesn't it? Like a storm gathering on the horizon. He didn't write for the comfortable. He didn't write for the people who want everything to be easy. He wrote for the ones in the trenches, the ones staring into the dark. And when we talk about tough times, about the kind of adversity that makes you question if you can even take another breath, Nietzsche is the voice that cuts through the noise. He doesn't offer a hug. He doesn't say, it's gonna be okay. No, he offers something stronger, a weapon. He looks at the human condition, at the sheer, grinding tragedy of existence, and he asks a single, terrifying question. Why? Not why is this happening to me? That's the question of a victim. Nietzsche wants to know, what is your why? Because he famously argues that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Think about that for a second. The how is the pain. The how is the grief, the loss of a job, the heartbreak, the sickness that won't go away. The how is the suffering that life throws at you without asking permission. And Nietzsche points out that this suffering, it's inevitable. You can't outrun it. You can't hide from it. But the why, that is the anchor. He suggests that the problem isn't that we suffer. The problem is that we suffer without meaning. Suffering for nothing destroys you, but suffering for something, that builds you. He sees us as creatures who are desperate for meaning, and he warns us explicitly that we cannot look for this meaning in the sky or in the past or in the approval of the herd. We have to forge it, ourselves, in the fire. He describes a frightening freedom. If the universe doesn't care, if there is no pre-written destiny, then you are the author, and that is a heavy burden, but it's also the only way to be truly alive.
Nietzsche paints a picture of the human soul not as a finished statue, but as a messy, chaotic workshop. He tells us, you must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. See, we usually run from the chaos. We hate the confusion. We hate the hard times. But he argues that the star, the brilliance, the beauty, the legacy, cannot exist without that chaos. You don't get the light without the burning. And this is where it gets really tough. He talks about the concept of the Übermensch, the overman. This isn't about being a superhero. It's about self-overcoming. He looks at you and says, you are both the marble and the sculptor. And that's a brutal image, because to shape the marble, the sculptor has to strike it. To carve out the masterpiece, you have to chip away the pieces that don't belong. But since you are also the marble, you feel every strike of the hammer. Nietzsche claims that your suffering is just the hammer hitting the stone. It hurts. God, it hurts. But he asks you, do you want to remain a rough, unformed rock? Or do you want to become who you are meant to be? He warns against the life of the last man, the person who just wants comfort, the person who wants a warm bed and no risk and a little bit of happiness. Nietzsche despises that. He thinks that is a waste of a human spirit. He wants you to embrace the difficulty. He calls this Amor Fati, the love of fate. This is the hardest part of his philosophy. He doesn't just want you to tolerate the tough times. He doesn't want you to just grate your teeth and get through it. He wants you to love it. To look at your life, the mistakes, the tragedies, the scars, the moments where you fell face first into the dirt, and say, yes, this too, this belongs to me. Why? Because he argues that everything is connected. If you want the joy, you have to take the sorrow. You can't cherry pick your existence. To say yes to one moment of happiness is to say yes to all the pain that led up to it. He challenges us with the idea of eternal recurrence, a thought experiment. Imagine a demon came to you tonight in your loneliest loneliness and said, this life, as you live it now and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every thought and sigh, all of it, over and over again, like an hourglass turning. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth? Or would you stand up and say, yes, I would do it all again? That is the standard he sets. It's impossible almost. But it forces you to look at your adversity differently. If you had to live this tough time over and over for eternity, how would you handle it? You wouldn't wallow. You wouldn't give up. You would try to make it a moment worth repeating. You would try to find the nobility in the struggle. So Nietzsche isn't telling you to be happy. He's telling you to be great. He's telling you that the abyss you're staring into, it's staring back, but you don't have to blink. He argues that meaning is the antidote to despair, and that meaning doesn't come from a life of ease. It comes from looking at the horror of existence, looking at the suffering, and saying, I will carry this. I will build something with this. Find your why.
That is his command. Find the thing that makes the suffering worth it. Because once you have that, the how doesn't matter anymore. You can endure the cold, you can endure the dark, you can endure the loneliness. Because you are going somewhere. You are becoming something. You are giving birth to a star.
You know that feeling when life just tightens? When everything goes wrong and your immediate instinct is to clench your fists. You grit your teeth. You dig your heels in. You tell yourself, I'm going to fight this. It's a natural reaction. We are taught that strength looks like a stone wall, immovable, rigid, defiant. We think that to survive the storm, we have to be harder than the wind. But Lao Tzu, the ancient sage, suggests we have it all backward. He looks at our tension, our stress, our desperate need to control the uncontrollable, and he offers a counterintuitive piece of advice, a warning, really.
Be like water. It sounds soft, doesn't it? Almost passive? But don't mistake this for weakness. Lao Tzu argues that water is actually the most powerful force on earth, precisely because it does not resist. He points to the river. When a river meets a massive boulder in its path, what does it do? Does it stop? Does it argue? Does it smash itself against the rock in a rage? No, it flows around it.
It slips through the cracks. It goes under, over, sideways. It adapts its shape to the obstacle. And eventually, over enough time, that soft, yielding water wears the rock down to nothing. This is the core of his philosophy, often called Wu Mei, or effortless action. It's not about doing nothing, it's about doing the sensible thing. It's about alignment.
Lao Tzu observes that human beings are the only creatures who consistently swim upstream. When we face adversity, a job loss, a heartbreak, a sudden failure, we waste immense energy screaming at the reality of the situation. We scream at the rock. Why are you here? You shouldn't be here. But the rock doesn't care. The rock is just there. So Lao Tzu warns us against the danger of rigidity. In the Tao Te Ching, he points out a simple biological truth. Men are born soft and supple. Dead, they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. Think about that. Rigidity isn't a sign of strength. It's a sign of death.
When a hurricane hits a forest, have you noticed which trees survive? The mighty oak, the one that stands tall and refuses to bow? No, it snaps. It breaks because it cannot bend. It's the willow, the grass, the bamboo that survives. They yield to the wind. They bow all the way to the ground if they have to. And when the storm passes, they bounce back up. They survived because they didn't fight the reality of the storm. Lao Tzu urges us to apply this to our darkest times. When you are in a crisis, he says, do not become brittle. Do not let your ego calcify into a hard shell, because if you are hard, life will break you. If you are soft, life can only shape you. There is another layer to this, one that is perhaps even harder for our modern egos to swallow. Lao Tzu talks about the valley spirit. He observes that water always seeks the lowest level. It flows to the places that humans disdain, the ditches, the depressions, the gutters. It seems humiliating, doesn't it, to go low? But he argues that the low place is actually the place of power. The ocean is the king of all streams, not because it is higher, but because it is lower than all of them, so all water flows to it.
When you are going through hell, Lao Tzu suggests you stop trying to maintain your high status. Stop trying to pretend you are on top of the world. Accept the low place. Accept the grief. Accept the confusion. By accepting the situation, by flowing into the valley of your problem rather than standing on the peak denying it, you gather strength. You become vast, like the ocean.
The soft overcomes the hard, he writes. The gentle overcomes the rigid. It is a paradox. We want to hammer our problems into submission. We want to force a solution. But have you ever tried to grab water? The tighter you clench your fist, the faster it slips through your fingers. But if you cup your hands gently, you can hold it. This is how we must deal with trauma and adversity. You cannot strangle your demons. You cannot brute force your way out of depression or grief. You have to flow through it.
So, the next time the world puts a boulder in your path, don't be the rock that clashes against it. Don't shatter yourself trying to be tough. Be the water. Slip around the side, find the crack. Erode the obstacle with your patience, not your force. Adapt to the container life has put you in, whether it's a teapot or a vast ocean. Lao Tzu promises that if you can do this, if you can yield without giving up, you become invincible, because you cannot break something that has no rigid form. You cannot defeat something that refuses to fight you. You just flow past it, on your way to something greater. There is a man sitting in a tent. It is cold. The ground is freezing. Outside, the wind is howling across the Danube. And the noise isn't just wind. It's the clatter of armor, the shouts of men, the impending violence of the Germanic tribes waiting in the dark. This is Marcus Aurelius. He isn't sleeping. He's the most powerful man on earth, the Roman emperor, but he looks nooking like a god. He looks like a man who is tired, bone tired. He's dealing with plague, betrayal, a crumbling frontier. The weight of the entire known world is sitting right on his chest. And in this moment, by the flickering light of a lamp, he isn't writing a decree. He isn't writing a battle plan. He's writing a note to himself. He picks up his pen and he writes about a cliff. It's a strange image for an emperor, right? But he needs it. He tells himself, be like the cliff against which the waves continually break. Pause on that for a second. We usually want to be the water. We want to be fluid, moving, going somewhere. But Marcus argues that when life gets hard, when the tough times really hit, motion is the enemy. Panic is the enemy. He says the cliff stands firm. It doesn't scream at the ocean. It doesn't ask the waves, why me? Why are you hitting me? It just stands. And eventually, he points out, the fury of the water falls to sleep at its feet. This is the first thing he wants us to understand about adversity. The waves, they are inevitable. They are the emails piling up, the debt, the sickness, the heartbreak, the betrayal. You cannot stop the ocean from moving. Marcus knew this. He couldn't stop the Marcomanni Wars just by wishing them away. He couldn't stop the plague that was killing his people. So he suggests that trying to control the waves is madness. The only thing you can control is the rock, you. But then he goes deeper, and this is where it gets really beautiful, almost haunting. He catches himself feeling sorry for himself. We all do it. Something bad happens and the script in our head starts running instantly. I am so unlucky. I can't believe this is happening to me. This is a disaster. Marcus catches that thought. He grabs it by the throat. He writes down a correction. He literally edits his own soul on the page. It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened and I've remained unharmed by it. Hear that shift? It's subtle, but it changes everything. He argues that the event itself, the adversity, is neutral. The rock falling on the path isn't bad. It's just a rock. Gravity brought it down. Physics. But the story we tell, that's where the pain lives. When we say, I am unlucky, we are adding a layer of judgment. We are turning a fact into a tragedy. Marcus warns us against this. He says, look, Not everyone could handle this, but you can. He defines good luck not as a life without storms, because that's a fairy tale, but as a character that doesn't break when the storm hits. Not shattered by the present, he writes, and not frightened of the future. That is the definition of the cliff. See, the ocean wants to erode you. Life wants to wear you down. It chips away at your patience, your kindness, your sanity.
And if you are soft, if you are porous, you crumble. You become sand. But Marcus points out that you have a choice. You can choose to be solid. He isn't saying you shouldn't feel pain. He lost children. He lost friends. He felt grief. He wasn't a robot. But he realized that there is a fortress inside the mind that the waves cannot touch unless you open the gates. So when the chaos starts, when the noise gets loud and the water starts smashing against your face, he asks you to remember what you are. You aren't the foam. You aren't the spray. You are the promontory. He suggests that there is a kind of quiet power in simply outlasting the noise. The wave breaks, it shatters, it hisses and foams and makes a big scene, and then it recedes, and the cliff is still there. It's almost as if he's telling us, wait it out, stand your ground, this too shall settle. Because the alternative is to be tossed around, to be dragged out to sea by every bit of bad news, by every insult, by every failure. And that, Marcus warns, is a life of slavery. He wants you to be free. And freedom for him isn't about escaping the war or the cold tent. It's about sitting in that tent, feeling the cold, hearing the enemy, and deciding calmly, I am unharmed. I am ready. I am the rock. There is a man at the foot of a mountain. His hands are rough, calloused from centuries of friction. There is dust in his eyelashes, sweat stinging his eyes. And before him stands a rock, a massive, jagged thing. His punishment is simple, yet infinite. He must push this stone up the slope, straining every muscle, his face pressed against the cold earth, only to watch it roll back down the moment he reaches the summit, over and over again, forever. This is the myth of Sisyphus. But Albert Camus, the French philosopher of the absurd, asks us to look closer. He doesn't want us to pity this man. He wants us to witness him. Because in this endless, futile labor, Camus argues, lies the secret to dealing with the crushing weight of existence. He presents us with a hard truth, a really hard one. The universe is silent. We scream at the sky. We ask why? Why this suffering? Why this loss? Why this adversity? We demand order. We crave meaning. But the world gives us nothing back. It is chaotic, indifferent, and Camus calls this collision, this violent clash between our desperate need for meaning and the unreasonable silence of the world, the absurd. So, here we are, stuck with the rock. Adversity hits us, the diagnosis comes back bad, the relationship shatters, the career collapses, the rock rolls down. Camus points out that we usually try to escape this pain in two ways. First, there is hope. We look for a cure in the future. We tell ourselves, it will make sense later, or we look to a life beyond this one. Camus calls this philosophical suicide. He argues that by pinning our peace on a hope that doesn't exist yet, we destroy the reality of now. We numb ourselves to the present moment. Ending the existence to end the tension. But Camus rejects this too. He shouts a resounding no.
He tells us that suicide is a confession. It is confessing that life is too much for you, that you do not understand it.
So what is left if we cannot hope for a better tomorrow and we cannot quit? What do we do with the suffering? We revolt. Camus offers us the concept of revolt. And this isn't about fighting in the streets. It is an internal state of constant confrontation. It is staring into the abyss of your adversity and refusing to blink. He argues that the moment the rock rolls down to the bottom of the mountain, that is the moment that matters. He is interested in Sisyphus during that return trip, the pause. The rock is at the bottom. The man is at the top. He has to walk back down to the plain to start again. Camus calls this the hour of consciousness. It is in this descent that the tragedy sets in. Sisyphus knows his fate. He knows it is useless. He knows the pain is coming again. But Camus says that this lucidity, this total awareness of his torture, crowns his victory. By accepting the rock, by acknowledging the absurdity of his task, he takes ownership of it. His fate belongs to him, Camus writes. His rock is his thing. Think about that. When adversity strikes, it feels like a punishment from the gods. But Camus suggests that if you accept the burden without resignation, if you say, "This is my life, this is my struggle, and I will carry it," you rob the gods of their power. There is no fate that cannot be surmounted by scorn. You rebel against the absurdity of life by living it anyway, by living it intensely, by feeling the cold stone against your cheek and pushing it, not because you hope to reach the top and stay there, but simply because you are alive. And here is where it gets truly poetic. Camus invites us to imagine Sisyphus returning to his rock. He sees the rough surface, he sees the mineral world, and in that silent, desolate universe, he finds a strange kind of joy. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, he tells us. He doesn't promise us that the rock will get lighter. He doesn't promise that the mountain will level out. He is too honest for that. He simply points out that the crushed atom of a grieving heart is still a beating heart. He argues that happiness and the absurd are two sons of the same earth. They are inseparable. You cannot have the sun without the shadow. You cannot know the day without the night. So when the tough times come, when the wait feels impossible, Camus doesn't tell you to wait for it to pass. He tells you to walk back down the mountain, to look at your specific, heavy, terrible rock, and to realize that the act of pushing it is the only meaning you will ever get, and that it is enough. He leaves us with one final striking image. He looks at this man, sweating, broken, exhausted, walking back toward his eternal torment, and he makes a demand of us, a demand that changes everything about how we view suffering. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. There's an old Greek voice, quiet, almost a whisper, coming from a garden just outside of Athens, Epicurus. And he's not telling you to fight. He's not telling you to conquer the world or burn yourself out trying to fix everything that's broken. He's telling you to hide, not in cowardice, but in sanity. See, history has done Epicurus dirty. We hear Epicurean and we think of gluttony, feasts, wine, excess. We think of a billionaire on a yacht ignoring the fire on the shore. But that's a lie. That isn't him. Epicurus looks at our adversity, our panic, our financial ruin, our heartbreak, and he diagnoses it. He says our suffering isn't usually about what is happening to us. It's about what we think we need to be happy. He argues that we are in pain because we are addicted to more. When life falls apart, it's terrifying because we think we're losing everything. But Epicurus asks, what are you actually losing? He breaks it down. He sits us on a stone bench in his garden, the Kapos, and he points out that there are only 3 types of desires: natural and necessary, food, water, shelter, a friend to talk to. Then there's natural but unnecessary, rich food, expensive wine, soft silk. And then the killer, unnatural and unnecessary, fame, power, status, the desperate need to be liked by strangers. When adversity strikes, it usually attacks the second and third categories. We lose our status, we lose our luxury, and we feel like we're dying. But Epicurus smiles, a sad, gentle smile. He says, "He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing." He's teaching us the art of subtraction. Think about it. The world is collapsing around you. You lost the job, the relationship ended. Epicurus suggests that this is the moment to retreat into the garden of small pleasures. It's a defensive strategy. He tells us to look at what is right in front of us. Can you breathe? Is there sunlight hitting the floor? Do you have a piece of cheese? Do you have water? It sounds almost insulting when you're in deep pain. Just drink some water? But he's deadly serious. He argues that the root of our misery is fear. Fear of the future, fear of pain, fear of death. And he has a cure. The tetrapharmakokos, the 4-part cure. He says, don't fear God, don't worry about death. What is good is easy to get. What is terrible is easy to endure. That last part, that's the hard one. What is terrible is easy to endure. How can he say that? Epicurus points out that intense pain, it doesn't last. It kills you or it fades. Chronic pain, you get used to it. You build a tolerance. The mind, he argues, has a fortress. When the body hurts or the bank account is empty, Epicurus tells us to travel in time. Not forward, never forward. That's where anxiety lives, but backward, to memory. He believed that gratitude for the past is a weapon against the present. He suffered, by the way. He had kidney stones, agonizing pain. And on his deathbed, he wrote a letter to a friend. He said the pain was unbearable, yet he was happy. Why? Because he was remembering conversations they had years ago. That's the core of the Epicurean defense, friendship. He argues that of all the things wisdom provides to make us happy, friendship is by far the greatest. Not networking, not connections, real, deep friendship. When the world turns cold, you don't need an empire. You need a garden, and you need friends in it. Epicurus bought a house and a garden just to live with his friends. They ate simple bread, they drank water, and they were untouchable. Because when you reduce your needs to zero, adversity has nothing to grab onto. It can't steal from you if you don't own anything you fear losing. So, the philosophy here isn't about chasing pleasure. It's about ataraxia, untroubledness, just floating. He warns us, nothing is enough for the man to whom enough is too little. If you are going through hell right now, Epicurus would tell you to stop looking at the hell. Stop looking at the void. Look at the small thing in your hand. The cup of coffee, the warmth of a blanket, the sound of rain. He says that if you can enjoy a pot of cheese as much as a feast, you are free. You are invincible. Adversity feeds on your expectations. It hurts because you wanted the world to be different. Epicurus says, change the want. Retreat to the garden. Close the gate. Let the empire burn outside if it has to. You have bread. You have a friend. You have your mind. And that, he says, is enough. We have to go back.
back to the darkest place humanity has arguably ever manufactured, Auschwitz. It's cold, it's gray, the air smells of ash. And here, stripped of his name, reduced to a mere number tattooed on trembling skin, stands Viktor Frankl. He wasn't writing from a comfortable armchair in Vienna. He wasn't theorizing about pain while sipping coffee. No. Frankl was inside the nightmare. He was living the very hell he would later try to heal us from. And in that place where death was arguably the only predictable daily event, Frankl noticed something strange, something that defied logic. He saw that survival wasn't purely physical. It wasn't always the strongest men, the ones with the biggest muscles or the warmest coats who made it through the night. Often, they were the first to break. Instead, he saw frail men, starving men, men who looked like they should have collapsed weeks ago. He saw them keep going. Why? Frankl asked himself this over and over. He observed that the men who survived were the ones who had an anchor thrown into the future. They were tethered to something outside of those barbed wire fences. A child waiting for them, a manuscript that needed to be finished, a wife they had to see one last time. He realized that human beings are driven by a will to meaning, not a will to power like Nietzsche thought, not a will to pleasure like Freud got, but a desperate, clawing need to find meaning in our existence. Frankl argues that when we can't find meaning, we don't just get sad, we get sick. We experience an existential vacuum, a hollowness. And in the camps, that hollowness was fatal. He describes a terrifying phenomenon. He could tell when a prisoner was about to die. It usually happened in the morning. The man would just refuse to get up. He wouldn't dress, he wouldn't wash. He would reach into his pocket, take out his last hidden cigarette, and smoke it. That was the signal, the surrender. The moment the why disappeared, the how became impossible. But here is where Frankl offers us a lifeline, a way out of our own dark times. He tells us that we have it all wrong. We spend our lives questioning life. Why is this happening to me? What does life have to offer me? Frankl flips the script. He says, stop asking what you expect from life. Start asking what life expects from you. It's a Copernican shift. You are not the one asking the questions. You are the one being questioned. Life is asking you, right now, in the middle of your suffering, how will you respond? Because, as Frankl famously points out, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. They could take his clothes, they could take his dignity, they could shave his head and starve his body. But they could not take his freedom to choose his attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose his own way. That space, the tiny microscopic space between the stimulus, what happens to you, and the response, what you do about it, that is where your freedom lives. And Frankl isn't saying we should pretend pain doesn't hurt. He's not preaching toxic positivity. He admits that suffering is like a gas. If you pump a certain amount of gas into an empty chamber, it will spread to fill the container completely and evenly. Suffering is the same. It fills the soul entirely, whether the suffering is trivial or tragic. But, and this is the crucial part, he argues that suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. If you know why you are suffering, if you are suffering for a cause, for a person, or for the sake of your own spiritual growth, the pain changes texture. It becomes bearable. He remembers walking to the worksite in the bitter cold, his shoes falling apart, feet swollen and bleeding. The pain was excruciating. But then he forced his mind to drift. He thought of his wife. He didn't know if she was alive or dead,
But he summoned her image. He had mental conversations with her. And in that muddy, freezing hell, he understood the truth, that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. The salvation of man is through love and in love. So when the world breaks you, when the tragedy hits, Frankl warns us not to look for happiness. Happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. It only comes as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself. If you chase happiness, it runs away. If you chase meaning, happiness might just follow you home. He challenges us to look at our hardships and ask, what is this demanding of me? Is this suffering asking me to be brave? Is it asking me to be patient? Is it asking me to let go? There is a tragic optimism in his work. He believes we can say yes to life in spite of everything. Even when the body is broken, even when the bank account is empty, even when the grief is a physical weight on your chest, you still have that last freedom. You can decide who you will be in the fire. Frankl survived the camps. He went back to his manuscript. He rebuilt his life from the ashes, and he left us with this haunting, beautiful mandate. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is the guide. That is the way through, not around the suffering, but through it, armed with a meaning that makes the suffering matter. But in the ancient silence of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu whispers a different truth. He suggests that this judgment, it's an illusion, a trick of the mind that causes us endless suffering. He illustrates this not with a complex formula, but with a simple story, a parable about an old farmer. And it starts with a loss. The farmer has a horse, a magnificent creature, his pride, his labor force. And one day, for no reason at all, the horse runs away. It vanishes into the hills. Now, look at the neighbors. Lao Tzu uses them to mirror us, to mirror society. They come running. They are frantic. They wail. "Oh, what terrible luck! You are ruined, old man! How will you plow? How will you live? This is a tragedy." They have already written the end of the story. But the farmer, he is standing there, calm, still. He looks at the empty stable, then at the weeping neighbors, and he offers a single word: maybe. He doesn't fight the event. He doesn't tear his clothes in grief. He simply says, maybe. Lao Tzu points out that the farmer understands something the others don't. The farmer understands the flow, the Tao. He knows that nature doesn't move in straight lines of good and bad. It moves in curves. It moves in cycles. A few days pass, and suddenly, the dust rises on the horizon. The horse returns. But he's not alone. He brings with him a dozen wild horses, strong, beautiful beasts. In an instant, the farmer is the wealthiest man in the village. So the neighbors return. Of course they do. They are ecstatic now. They cheer. "What luck! What a blessing! You were right to wait. You are chosen by the heavens." They are judging again. They are clinging to the good just as tightly as they recoiled from the bad. The farmer just looks at the teeming corral. Maybe. He refuses to be seduced by the high, just as he refused to be crushed by the low. Lao Tzu argues here that our misery comes from this attachment, from the desperate need to freeze time, to say, stay here, this is the best moment. But water cannot stay, it must flow. Then the story turns again. The farmer's son, a young, strong boy, tries to tame one of the wild horses. He is thrown. Badly. His leg is shattered. It's a gruesome injury.
he will limp for the rest of his life. The neighbors swarm back. Their faces are long with pity. Oh, what a curse. Better the horses never came. Now your son is crippled. Who will help you in old age? This is the worst thing that could have happened. The judgment. The gavel comes down again. The farmer tends to his son's leg. He looks at the neighbors with that same ethereal patience. Maybe. He doesn't deny the pain. Lao Tzu isn't saying we shouldn't feel pain. The leg is broken. That is a fact. But bad? That is a story. And the farmer refuses to write it. A week later, the army marches into the village. It is conscription time. A brutal war has started. They take every able-bodied young man. They drag them from their homes to die on the front lines. The village is emptied of its youth. There is weeping in every house, except one. They look at the farmer's son. They see the broken leg. They pass him by. He lives. And here, Lao Tzu stops us. He asks us to look at the chain. If the horse hadn't run away, no wild horses. No wild horses, no broken leg. No broken leg, the son would be dead in a trench. So was the horse running away bad? Was the broken leg a tragedy? Lao Tzu warns that we are looking at the world through a keyhole. We see a tiny sliver of time, a breakup, a job loss, a failure, and we think we see the whole picture. We think we see the end. But the Tao suggests there is no end. There is only the process. The philosopher Alan Watts, interpreting this Taoist wisdom, often said that the whole process of nature is an integrated complexity. It is impossible to tell whether anything that happens in it is good or bad, because you never know what will be the consequence of the misfortune. You never know what will be the consequence of the good fortune. Lao Tzu invites us to drop the gavel, to stop exhausting ourselves by trying to categorize every single event as a blessing or a curse. When we are in a dark time, he suggests we are simply in the dip of a wave. It is not a permanent state. It is not a punishment. It is just what is happening right now. The neighbors, they are exhausted. They are on an emotional roller coaster, up, down, slaves to circumstance. The farmer, he is at peace. He rests in the center. He accepts the complexity of life without needing to label it. He knows that disaster leans on good fortune, and good fortune rests beside disaster. So when the world crumbles around you, Lao Tzu doesn't ask you to smile and pretend it's fine. He asks you to zoom out. He asks you to withhold the final verdict, to look at the rubble, take a breath, and simply say, maybe.